A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional. All right, let's do some intentions. Hi, Joanna and Dr. Naomi. I'm writing because I need help with an intention to control my germ phobia, especially inside my home, which is causing me to obsess over details and nag my spouse about every single detail. I don't exactly recall when it started, but it just gets worse as I grow older. I'm a 37-year-old woman. I teach at a middle school and my spouse is a dentist. To give you some context, I constantly have obsessive thoughts about every single thing that can be contaminated with germs. When I come home from work, the gym, a restaurant or bar, or any place where I've sat down, I immediately change into clean clothes and wash my hands before I sit on the couch or on any other surface at my house. I don't expect my spouse to do the same, but I have told him I would like him to do the same, and I definitely don't want to nag him or act like his mom by telling him to wash his hands and change his clothes every single time he comes home. He tries to follow my rule, but he is not as consistent as I am. Let me share an example of my obsession. I have a strict rule about not wearing outside clothes on the bed. I shower every night right before bed and need to know that my bed is clean so I can lay down on it. It is my clean, safe haven. He has adhered to this rule and uses a new pajama every night and almost always showers before bed as well, which gives me peace of mind. But as I mentioned before, he doesn't always change his outside clothes as soon as he gets home and sits on the couch, not on the bed with them on. So what is the problem if he showers and changes his clothes before bed? Well, my thoughts are he sometimes comes home, sits on the couch with work clothes or gym clothes, so now the couch is contaminated. That's my thought process. He showers before bed, changes into clean pajamas, but then sometimes sits back on the couch for a few minutes before heading to bed with his clean bed clothes. And now I'm obsessively thinking about how he just contaminated his clean bed clothes and will come to bed, and now the bed will be contaminated. It takes all I have to not say anything about it because I know this is an absurd obsession. I have thought many times about adding more to my no outside clothes in bed rule, or say no outside or couch clothes in bed. But I don't want to say that out loud because I don't want to keep telling him what to do. It's his house. He should be free to do as he pleases, especially because he's already followed many of my rules. This is just one example of how germophobia affects my life and those around me. These obsessive thoughts occupy a big space in my mind, and I want to be free from them. I already mop the floor and disinfect the surfaces and couches as often as possible, which also takes up a lot of time and is physically taxing. Please help. A germ-free key Betch.
Yeah, this sounds exhausting.
I know people throw around that term, but it does sound a little like obsessive compulsive.
There are treatments for this. I think a lot of people got into this heavily with COVID because then it seemed more reasonable and rational. Although I remember one time like wiping down cereal boxes at the grocery store, and I was like, I'm just not going to be doing this. Like, yes. I did it once and I was like, if I die, I die.
From the cereal box, right? I mean, at a certain point, you kind of have to think that way. And it's like, it's funny she uses the word contaminated.
Right.
Like the bed is, that to me is like a very strong word. It's not like isn't completely clean would be one thing, or, you know, has some outside residue from the bar seats that he was sitting on.
Right.
Contaminated sounds like a very intense, COVID-y kind of word.
Right. Yes, totally. And I think you're right that type of thinking that once something has a germ on it, that it is now a threat. There's germs on everything. Even whatever it is that you think that you're doing, there's still germs all over everything. So if you look at it that way, like everything is pretty much contaminated. But I think this idea that she can prevent the contamination and then she will be safer if something is not contaminated is making her feel like it's giving her some sense of control. That's making her think, okay, I have some control over this. So I just have to hold on to that and actually go a little bit further with now the no sitting on the couch once you have your pajamas on, which she knows. And she said it's absurd. And
I mean, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard because you're like, I want to be a clean person, right? But where's the line? And I think a lot of these habits start, even like working out. Like I want to be a fit person, but like how much is too much, or how much is like, how clean is too clean? But also you don't want to be, I think there's a fear of being dirty or letting your home become dirty. Or maybe if you're talking about fitness, like becoming, lazy or gaining weight or doing, something else that's like becomes the worst consequence of this. Maybe it's illness. I don't know what her fear is there.
You're hitting the nail on the head. I think a lot of these obsessive type mental illnesses come from a fear of the worst case scenario. So you go so hard to make sure you're like clinging to every ounce of control around it, like exercise. Like if I miss one day of my 6-day-a-week exercise routine, then I'm going to end up like completely unfit and unwell, or workaholic stuff. Like if I call in sick one day because I just don't feel like going that day, then all of a sudden I'm going to be this lazy bum that I was in junior year of high school, and I'm never going to be successful. I'm going to be fired. And it is this very black and white thinking. That's a lot of times that's where eating disorders come from. You bring up exercise, but it's kind of like, if I don't count every calorie that comes into my body, then I'm going to totally lose control over this thing. And I'm going to end up gaining, 100 pounds or whatever the fear is.
A lot of the times the line is kind of blurry about like, where is the line between I'm a person who keeps a clean home, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just like there's nothing wrong with I'm a person who works out and cares about my physical fitness, or I'm a person who, is mindful about the foods that I'm putting in my body. Where does that become this like obsessive thing? I was thinking about that because I used to wear an Apple Watch to count my steps. Mm-hmm. And there was a time, I think it was during COVID, it was like kind of triple threat. Like I had very little to do, and I was getting married, where I was like, I must get 10,000 steps a day. Like I was like walking up and down my hallway to get in my apartment building to get, and I kind of knew, like, just like this listener, I kind of knew it was crazy, but I'm like, I'm in it. Like I'm going to check it off and then I can relax, or there's like or if I don't do it or if I don't care today, then maybe I don't care tomorrow. Then maybe I, don't have the look that I want for the wedding.
Totally.
Or something.
Yeah. And I do wonder what her fear is. I mean, I wonder if maybe there was some COVID trauma. I do see this in people that have lost friends or family members, in COVID. Or I think it's important to ask yourself, like, what is the fear? Is the fear that you're going to get a cold? Is the fear that you're going to get the flu? Is the fear that you're going to get COVID? What are you actually afraid of? I think sometimes it's just it's like this imaginary thing that she's like picturing these germs in her bed. And as she's falling asleep, she's like, I just can't get comfortable because I know there are germs in this bed. And so somehow that feels like just a bad thing. But ultimately, I think that she needs to lean in, lean against the grain a little bit. And what I would recommend that she do, she's coming to us. I'm at the other end of the spectrum of like, if you sneeze or you cough, or like when we go to Six Flags and we ride on a ride, we'll like wash our hands afterwards, but there's no changing before the couch. Like the couch is the couch. The dogs are on the couch. The dogs are in the yard. They're on the couch. Yeah. Like, the
dogs really, same thing. Like
no
first
control.
I was like, no shoes in the house. Now I'm like, I wake up with shoes on my face from the dog bringing my shoe, just drops right on my head. And like old smelly socks just like surrounding me.
Yes.
So, but it is funny, like though certain times, like I think it's almost sometimes something has to happen where you're just like, fuck it.
Yes.
But I don't know. It doesn't sound like she's gotten there.
Take your control away. The kids and the dogs like force you to go through the desensitization process like a boot camp immediately. Like I have no control over this. She's already feeling like kind of overwhelmed by how much time and thought, energy this is taking up. So you're going to have, if you do the desensitization and you make what we call in psychology an anxiety hierarchy, and you work your way through it, you're going to reclaim your peace, your time, your life, perhaps your relationship with your husband is going to be a little bit better. With your partner, I forget who it was, but what I would recommend you do is make a list of all the things that make you feel anxious around this. Every single thing. From my husband comes in from work, leaves his shoes on, gets in the bed with his work clothes and his shoes and rubs his body all over the place, to this newest thing, which is he sits on the couch with his clothes, then he sits back on the couch with his, and maybe there's smaller things in the middle there. So you're going to make a list of everything that makes you anxious about this. And then you're going to rank them. One being like the least anxiety provoking all the way up to whatever, 20 or however many are on there. And then you're going to start at 1 and you're going to work on just tolerating that and breathing through it. And, I'll give you an intention that you can use. I mean, just as you know, I don't know what your fear is, but just anecdotally, I am not. And if you're immunocompromised or you have someone in your house that's very fragile, I get it. That's different. So maybe that is part of the story somewhere in there. But if you're both healthy and you both have normally working immune systems, I don't do any of this. And I, knock on wood, I can't remember the last time anyone in my house got the flu or strep or anything like this. So I think if you have whatever she might be afraid of, and this is with PJs on the couch and clothes in the bed and all the things that you think are making you safer, you work through each one and you kind of have to tell yourself basically the intention that I wrote for you when you're going through this is I'm choosing peace over certainty. My body can handle everyday germs. And that's the bit, what you said is people want to lean towards certainty. How do I know what's that subjective, they don't like that subjective area. What is the boundaries a little fuzzy? It's uncertain. I don't know what's okay, what's not okay. Do I need to spray down cereal boxes? Do I need to, wash my hands after I sneeze? There's boundaries and it is hard to know exactly where that ground is, but tolerating that uncertainty is going to bring you a lot more long-lasting, overarching peace, I think, if you can work through it.
I would definitely start with that. If that doesn't work, I might get a therapist.
Yeah.
Not to suggest that as the cure-all for everything, but I do think I would also ask myself, how many hours of the day am I thinking about the germs? Because if it is kind of taking over your life in a way that feels like a barrier to being happy and relaxed, there could be something you could take that would maybe make that thought about the germs a little less sticky.
Yeah, a medication, or honestly, a therapist is going to do what I just, if you go to someone for an OCD, they're going to do what we suggested, but it is nice to have someone to kind of walk you through it. And the other thing I hate to say is there are a ton of other threats in the world that you're just not thinking about. So sometimes that helps you realize I'm just obsessing over this germ thing. You could be obsessing over getting the brakes in your car fixed, getting the brakes in your car checked every 3 months, because what if they suddenly stop working? Or you could be obsessing over getting all the trees in your yard looked at to make sure they don't fall on your house during a storm. I mean, I can keep going and going and going about things that you can obsess over. You just happen to land on this one for some reason, but it's kind of just a random clawing at control.
And like you said, it's kind of you could do none of this stuff and be healthy, germ-free in a way that actually affects you. Or you could do all of this stuff and be constantly getting sick. So
yeah. And sometimes there is a little bit of a societal judgment thing. Or I remember that even starting in elementary school, people would be like, ew, you this, or ew, you that. It's there is this thing that it's almost you're a better person if you're more clean and sanitary. There's a morality to it almost.
No, it's true. And I mean, if you think too hard about anything, everything is disgusting.
Yeah.
Even the things she thinks are
Yes.
are not disgusting. Like I understand the idea of if you live in New York City and you take the subway and there's like urine residue on the seat that you don't want to like get into bed with your street clothes or whatever it is. But then you're like, okay, well, like what if I sit on the couch and then I could see where her mind would be like, it makes sense logically that like, if you're not going to follow all the rules, then what's the point of any of the rules because it's in this thing?
Yeah.
So it is hard. It is like a little bit of a slippery slope where sometimes it feels like it should be all or nothing because what's the point? It's like recycling almost.
Right.
Sometimes where you're like, if I don't know that it's going to the right place at the right thing, like what's the difference? Or
yes. No, I hear you. It's hard, but I mean, in the reality of it, if like, somebody urinates on the seat in the subway and then you sit down on it and I'm not suggesting this,
after it dries.
After it dries, play it out. You sit down on the couch and then he sits down in his pajamas and then he gets into the bed. Nothing's going to happen to you. Like you're not going to die from that. I get that it's gross. Nobody really wants that. You want your bed to be your safe haven, but the intensity of the fear that it feels like there's something that makes this feel dangerous. Like it's disgusting, but it's not really dangerous if you're not immunocompromised in some way. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to discuss the listeners, but you could go down a path where maybe you ingest some fecal matter and you get sick. That's like the worst case scenario of what she's really preventing, that like on her pillow or something. That's really probably not going to happen. I get you want some cleanliness barriers. I'm sure she's not going to go straight from the subway into her bed ever, no matter how many anxiety hierarchies she does. She's never going to get in her bed right after sitting in the subway. That's totally fine. Yes. But we can work on like the contamination from the street clothes to the couch, to the pajamas, to the bed. I think that's a good goal.
Also, you work in a middle school. Those kids are disgusting. None of them are probably showering.
And it's all in the air. I hate to say it, but like a lot of this stuff is airborne. It's, there's a sneeze across the room. That's probably worse than the whole couch pajama transmission route. It's just some snot-nosed kid sneezing in the front row. And there's nothing you could do about that.
It's funny. Now I'm thinking about it, she didn't even really ask how to stop thinking about this. She asked about like how to stop annoying her husband.
Well, the best way to stop annoying your husband is to
care less yourself.
Care less about this. Because even if you don't say anything, you're going to be sitting there in bed all tight and like anxious and wanting to say something. It's just stealing your peace, which is why I really like the intention of choosing peace over certainty. You're never going, yes, you could feel more certain by removing any of these transmission routes, but then you're really going to be robbing your peace, your ability to just enjoy the evening with your husband and not be like sitting there when he's speaking to you, he's sharing something with you and all you're thinking are, you've got to change your pajamas. You've got to change your pajamas.
Yeah. I would change the word in my head from contaminated. Because I think the words that you use do affect your mental state around something. So you could just say, not the cleanest. Let's start with that. Right.
Yes.
It's not the cleanest way to be.
Let us know how you do with this. This is really hard. This is just, it's another version. I hear this in so many different iterations of this type of thing, where people are trying to control a situation where there's a fear of not knowing what the outcome is. Like I had people that had one occasion where they like didn't make it to the bathroom in time because their stomach was upset. And now every time they go somewhere, they have to like map out find out where the nearest bathroom is, how long it's going to take to get there, what they have. It's like just another version of preventing discomfort, or in some case it feels as intense as preventing like death. But, there's ways to handle this and get that mental space back. There's so much space in your mind that you can use for joy and presence and, gratitude and all these other things that are being taken up by this fear of germs. So good luck.
Agreed. Good luck. All right, let's do some triggers.
Hi, Dr. Naomi and Jordana. I love the show and it's helped with so many situations in my life and I love sharing it with everyone I know. Awesome. Thank you. I have a triggered scenario that happened a few weeks ago at this point, but is still on my mind. My parents own a piece of land that had a house on it that they demolished. They hired a contractor to put a fence on it, but my dad didn't read the contract, so he didn't realize it was a contract for a wood fence, not a chain link fence. He wanted a chain link fence, so when it came time to pay the deposit, he realized the mistake and told the contractor to update the contract for a chain link fence. The contractor sent him another updated contract that he again didn't read and then installed the fence. The contractor sent my dad an invoice per the contract for $3,000. My dad was pushing back on it because he thought it was too high, but admittedly hadn't read what he agreed to pay for it. My mom was relaying all this to me when she was over and ended the story by saying, my dad had asked my husband, a lawyer, to review the contract. I'm also a lawyer, graduated at the same time as my husband, has generally the same level of experience, though I have spent a large part of my career in contract review, whereas my husband has not. I immediately relayed to my mom how offensive I found this request, as I am more than capable of helping them, and I have always been willing and eager to help my parents when they need it. My mom agreed, but she said she was just relaying the message from my dad. Every time I think of this scenario, I am re-triggered by it. I didn't bring it up to my dad, and he never actually ended up asking my husband himself for help with it. How triggered can I be? Best, the backup lawyer.
To me, this seems kind of nice. She didn't have to review a contract.
Yeah.
But clearly there's something where she's doubting her parents' views of her as successful and competent.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's where this trigger is coming from.
I get that. I would be offended by this. I think, especially if there's a couple layers to it, especially if she does contracts. It's almost like, do you not, maybe you don't know that about me, which maybe feels a little bit like a disconnect. Like, I'm your daughter. You don't know that I kind of specialize in this, or you do know that I specialize in this, and you still chose to go to my husband who doesn't specialize in this, which is more, both are offensive.
Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because
right.
you don't think of me as super smart? I could see those things running through her head, especially because it's her parents, I guess his parents.
Yeah, I
mean,
look,
it'd be easier to ask her than him.
Yes. What I think this possibly is, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, is just you're their child. They've grown up with you. They've seen you have temper tantrums. They've seen you probably make some big mistakes. They've seen you do a lot of, just normal human things that they know so much about you, all the good and the bad and the ugly. And maybe with your partner, he's always presented his more perfect self. So they don't have any thoughts of him doing anything other than his curated exposures that he's decided that they want to let him see. So they might see him as more professional or whatever, because you never came home drunk when you were 16 years old and puked all over the bathroom floor. I mean, I'm, guessing here, but maybe there are just these moments of them knowing you as a whole person. And it does suck that it's maybe tainting their view. Maybe it is a sexist thing which is probably the worst case scenario. What's offending her?
I think she could ask her dad in a non-aggressive, non-confrontational way.
Right.
Just being hey, I heard you asked whatever the husband's name is to review the contract. Did you know that I actually specialize in contracts?
Right. I wonder why you didn't ask me.
I'm sure he'll tell you.
I don't think it's so loaded that you couldn't ask him. Although he never ended up asking him. So that's the other part of maybe just let it go. Yeah. Where the mom just said that he said he was going to ask and he never ended up asking.
Or maybe he was going to speak to him about something else. And so he thought it was easier to just, if there's a few logical reasons someone might ask them instead of you. But right. I could see being a little annoyed, but also relieved again, if less work for you to do.
It does sound like me. She says I'm always willing and eager to help. It almost sounds like she wants the opportunity to use her degree to help her family, which I think is nice. And maybe that's part of what she thought, oh, this will be great. I can help out my people.
Like what you said before about how they've seen her in a tantrum or drunk. Maybe the dad has a sense of pride and feels like embarrassed that he didn't read the contract.
Right.
And then doesn't want to like let her see that he's like failed or done something wrong with this contract.
Yeah, that's a good point
in a flattering way.
Yeah, that is a good point because he did do it twice, which is like a little bit embarrassing.
Right.
Like he didn't read the first time and then didn't read it again after they had to rewrite it. So yeah, you might have a point there that he might be a little bit ashamed of, not reading it and maybe fearful. Like maybe this is your turn to get him back if he's ever been like, I can't believe you didn't, pay your car insurance or like get your inspection done. And now you have a chance to go back at him and say, I can't believe you didn't read this contract twice. So that's another way that can take this to think about it, that could take the sting out of it. But I think if in a couple of weeks you're still thinking about this, just as a conversation starter, not in an antagonistic way, but just like part of why I got this degree was I really am excited to help you guys with these types of things. And it hurt my feelings that you didn't want to come to me.
I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
All right. I would give it a 4.
I think a 4 sounds, I get it. But he also didn't end up asking the husband. So it was just more of like him.
Hypothetical. Maybe he would have thought about it more and asked you instead.
Ended up asking
maybe a 3.5.
Yeah. I'll give it a 4.
I'll read our last one. Hi, Dr. Naomi and Jordan. I'm a longtime fan of oversharing and all things Betches. Thank you for the weekly insights. I'm feeling really upset about a situation and I can't tell if I'm overreacting. We will tell you.
Yes.
I got married in the fall. It was a destination wedding in Europe where my husband is from. I invited a childhood friend and her husband and they RSVP'd yes. About 2 months before the wedding, she sent me the attached screenshot/text saying she could no longer attend. While 2 months isn't the week of the wedding, it also wasn't early enough for me to invite other guests, especially given that this was a destination wedding with expensive flights and a high per plate cost. What upset me most, though, was the wording and the tone of the attached text itself. We're going to read the text after I finish the email. I've always understood that once you RSVP yes to a wedding, that commitment takes priority over other social plans, including other weddings. I also struggled with the explanation because based on what I've seen, she and many of her friends have fairly elaborate weddings that don't seem last minute. Because of that, it was hard for me to reconcile the idea that another wedding date only became a conflict 2 months out, even though I recognize I don't know all the details. What makes this harder is the context. Just weeks before she sent that text, I had attended her wedding. Also an international destination wedding. We were close as kids, but had drifted apart over the years, mostly staying in touch through congratulatory texts. I received her invitation only 3 months before the wedding, which I assumed meant I was part of a later round of invites, and I tried not to take that personally. What did sting was that my then fiance was not invited, despite her knowing I was engaged. I went back and forth on whether to attend. It was expensive, required time off work, and I knew it would be uncomfortable not knowing many people. Still, out of sentimentality for our childhood friendship, I RSVP'd yes. Ultimately choosing to attend her wedding was entirely my decision. She didn't pressure me to go, and in hindsight, I should have thought more carefully. Her wedding was beautiful and her friends were welcoming, but I often felt out of place in ways I hadn't anticipated. Guests repeatedly asked about my fiance and why he wasn't there, and I was also meeting many other guests' fiancés, boyfriends, and girlfriends, which made me acutely aware of being there alone. I left socially exhausted but happy for her, and ultimately glad I went because it felt meaningful to witness a childhood friend get married. That's why receiving the below text dropping out of my wedding hurt so deeply. I was genuinely excited to see her and her husband there. I kept thinking about how our younger selves used to talk about being at each other's weddings someday. What bothers me most is that the message itself left me feeling like an afterthought without much acknowledgement of the position I was left in. I understand she made a choice, but I can't shake how the situation was handled. It's been months since both of our weddings, and she has not reached out to apologize, not so much as a phone call. Am I overreacting? Signed, a Betch who's trying her best to be self-aware and understanding. So I read this email before reading the text.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this person seems like they might have been pretty annoying. And then I read the text.
Right.
So I'll be her. I'll be the friend. You could be the listener.
Okay.
Hey, blank. I've been meaning to reach out because I feel so sad to say I won't be able to make it to, I assume, your wedding. One of my closest friends' weddings ended up landing on the exact same weekend, and I've been trying to make both work, but the flights and connections just aren't lining up. I'm really sorry. There's a couple of sad emojis in here. I feel so sad that I'll be missing your big day, especially as my first and oldest friend. Having you at my wedding meant so much to me, and I truly wanted to be there for you in the same way. I'll be thinking of you and celebrating from afar. When you have a minute to breathe, I would love to catch up and hear everything. I'm so happy for you and blank to start this new chapter together. And I know it's going to be such a beautiful celebration. 2 hearts.
Hi, sad you won't be able to make it. We'll miss having you and blank there. Thanks for letting me know.
Okay, so to me, this sounds like she did absolutely nothing really wrong, I think. I mean, I guess it's annoying to RSVP yes and then change your mind, but it's funny because the listener who's writing in, and not to invalidate, you're triggered, but like, I don't know what else she could have possibly said. Seems like a very nice note.
I agree. I thought the note was really nice. I don't think she could have phrased it any differently. She told the truth, which was also nice. She probably could have skirted that, but she said what happened. And it's always nice to give someone the benefit of the doubt that this other good friend really did maybe plan something last minute or change her date. Or I think her question is, did she really plan a wedding 2 months out? That's the part that seems a little sketchy, is like, did this friend just decide she's getting married in 2 months, like today? Or maybe she spent a month trying to figure out if she could do it. Even so, 3 months for a wedding seems like short notice. But I said,
3 months for a wedding, short notice. I feel like invitations usually get sent out 2 months in advance, maybe longer for a destination.
Right. Or if it's a good friend, do you think she would kind of most people have their place picked out like a year in advance, unless it's not that type of wedding,
she
which
said
is very possible.
It's not a good friend. I mean, she's saying the other person.
Right. It's this. She said it's one of her best friends, that she wouldn't have known her wedding date sooner. And again, I would give her the benefit of the doubt, and maybe she didn't. Like, what purpose would she have in, like screwing you over by waiting till 2 months? Like, you have to kind of give her the benefit of the doubt. I think the part that's hurtful about this, which I do get, is that she felt like she was part of the second round of invites in her wedding. Her fiance wasn't included in the invite. She took an international trip to go to her wedding, to then meet other people who were there with their boyfriends, girlfriends, and fiancés when hers wasn't invited. She was uncomfortable in that situation, but did it anyway in the spirit of their friendship and this whole thing, and then felt like she was just tossed away at the first opportunity for her to repay that. She says it's her tone and the text that's the most triggering. To me, I'm glad she included that context, because I think that context is what's triggering. I know she didn't force her, she didn't tell her, but I do think there is this expectation of, I did a lot that was uncomfortable for me to be there for you, and you're seemingly doing very little.
And I can see why that is annoying. I will say that I think that it seems like the way she describes the friendship, they're not that close. They have a history together, which feels sentimental. They said they would go to each other's weddings, but they only really text to congratulate each other on milestones, birthdays. Doesn't sound like they're regularly in contact. The friend, I think, maybe doesn't value the historical sense of their friendship as much. It doesn't even sound like this listener does, but she's trying to hold on to this like sentimental thing. And I actually think the friend's assessment of the friendship and how much she should invest in it seems a little bit more accurate.
Yeah.
And that's probably why she invited her maybe in a later round of invites of like, oh, I'll invite her. I don't really want to know the fiance. I'm sure she doesn't know the fiance well, even if she knows other people's boyfriends or girlfriends. So she's like, doesn't really matter to me that much if she comes, so I'm not going to invite the fiance. She went anyway. It sounds like she had an okay time. I could see being like regretful of having gone.
Yes.
Because she's like, I read this is like, but
maybe
I don't think
even rekindle, or maybe this is an opportunity to, I think her trigger is in, I shouldn't, and I don't want to speak for her, but I shouldn't have put all this effort into going to her wedding, because we're not at that level. And now I feel kind of like stupid, and like I tried so hard and she's not, even though probably if you could go back maybe you put more effort in to this friendship than it was worth, given that you guys are not that close anymore.
And I could see why the friend is like, oh, I have a close friend's wedding.
Right.
I'm going to go to the, you're not like, it seems like they're both in agreement that they're not each other's close friend.
Yeah.
So I could see why the other listeners like, I was going to go and return the favor, but then I couldn't make the flights work. I couldn't make the hotel. It just seemed like too big of a pain in the ass for someone that I don't really speak to that often.
And I could see getting triggered from the close friend being like, my close friend isn't coming to my wedding because she RSVP'd to a high school friend's wedding that she hasn't even hung out with in 3 years. And now I can't believe she's not going to come to my wedding just because she's like holding on to this etiquette of she responded first to her. So now my close friend is going to miss my wedding because of this high school friend that she barely speaks to. Like that would be triggering.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be more triggering than this. I think this is your sign. It's okay to let the friendship, that sounds like the friendship has already faded. Doesn't sound like you're like, it's tough because again, there's like this feeling of almost like you were talking about at the beginning of this episode with the toys. Like I don't use the toys. I don't really like, my kids don't like the toys. They take up a lot of space. I could like keep them here because for sentimentality, because they were here when I was little. Or I could just like accept that there's something wrong with them. They're not horrible, but they're not really bringing anything to my life. So I'm just not going to invest in them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the text was nice. I think I don't see why she would call to apologize. She just apologized to you in a text.
Right.
And she doesn't care that much about maintaining the friendship, but like maybe you shouldn't either. And I think instead of like, I would just cut the loss a little bit. Doesn't mean you have to hate her. Doesn't mean you have to like call her out. Or just say like, this is a friend that I had from childhood. When we were 10, we thought it would be fun to be at each other's weddings. That's just kind of not how life worked out. We're like, it's not like a fairy tale situation.
Right.
And it's okay.
Yeah, I agree. It is sad. And there might be a process of like, I think there might have been a little roller coaster of emotions of like, she was leaning in so hard with like going by herself when her fiance wasn't invited to an international, oh my God, maybe it will rekindle. Like, this is so like, I think there was like a hopefulness that then just you got the bottom dropped out of you when this happened. So I really do. I get it. It is sad to kind of let go, but I would look at that trip that you took as a growth experience for you. Like you were able to tolerate kind of being in these semi-awkward social situations in an international place with people you didn't know. You went by yourself. Hopefully it was a nice destination where you got to enjoy yourself a little bit, as opposed to like, conceptualizing it as I did this for whole trip was just for her. And now she's not returning the favor. So like all that money and time and effort was wasted, as opposed to like, that was probably a growth experience. I think going to an international wedding where you don't know anybody is a growth experience. And hopefully you enjoyed yourself instead of looking at it as like, I did all this and now, we're not even like she did it to like beef up the friendship and give it some legs, and it didn't turn out that way.
And I could see that being annoying, but I do think it's worse to have people who are going out of their way to be polite for an endless, like you could have friends where you kind of like, you get together with someone every 3 months because it's too weird to not. Right. Or like you're you're texting someone because it's too weird to not. And it's just like, what are you going to do that until you die? Like,
yeah.
I think take this as like you've gotten permission
freedom
to let the friendship go a little bit. That's not really doing much for you.
Yeah. And if you really wanted it, you would have been putting in more effort throughout the years beyond congrats on your promotion or your engagement or happy birthday. You would have been doing more if this friendship was something that was really, that you really wanted to have all these years. Just now, I do think the weddings bring that up. It's kind of like the weddings are like, who are my people? And I'll tell you, as someone who's like way past my wedding, like there are a lot of people that were at my wedding that I don't speak to anymore. And there are people that weren't at my wedding that I do speak to now that I wasn't really close with then. So life ebbs and flows. But yeah, I get it. I get why it's triggering. I think her text was really nice. I don't think she could have done any. She gave some good emojis. She seemed really thoughtful. She seemed apologetic. But it's sad. I won't take that away. Friendships, this is like a friendship ending kind of thing, especially if she hasn't reached out after to say, how was it? But you could also, if you really still are interested in this friendship and are willing to accept the assessment of like, we're not going to go out of our way for each other, but that doesn't mean it has to be over either.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be like angry or antagonistic. It's just like, I have friends where it's like, if it was the most convenient situation that ever occurred, I would see them.
Right.
Like,
yeah. And this is like paying thousands of dollars for an international flight and like taking time off work. This is not a low lift. Let's keep this friendship going. This isn't even a local wedding or a drive. This isn't a big effort for both of you. You did it. Maybe hindsight 2020, you wouldn't have done it. But, now you know.
now you know. The more you know. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd give it a 3 personally. But
I'm going to give it higher than a 3.
Okay.
I get that she didn't force her to go and she didn't tell her to go, but she went.
She had a better friend's wedding. Like I would expect her to go to that.
Yeah. I guess just in terms of how this listener feels, I don't think the friend did anything wrong, but I could see that she feels hurt. I'll give it a 4.5 because of the way she feels. Not that I think the friend did anything wrong. Like I think most people would choose to go to their good friend's wedding and it would be weird not to.
All right. Well, we can agree to disagree on the number, but
all right.
That's our episode.
All right. That's our time.
Great work today.